This is Del Mar at Night on Montreal's News Talk Leader, CJAD 800.
What are we listening to now? What was that?
Monkey.
What's the song?
Oh, Foo Fighters.
Oh, okay. You're just relishing
Monkey
the fact
Wrench.
that...
Monkey
Okay.
Wrench. Yeah.
You just love playing monkey clips. That's
Me and
basically...
my friends, my fine feathered friends,
Do
the
you
monkeys.
have... I don't think they have feathers.
Yeah.
Pretty sure they
like
don't.
an elephant.
Feathers. Do you have any other wacky monkey clips you want to play before we get to our interview, which
No,
should be
it's
fascinating?
important.
Yes.
Let's get to it.
Thank you. On the there's a monkey sanctuary near Montreal, chimpanzee sanctuary, which I think a lot of people would not know. Joining us on the line with the Fauna Foundation is Gloria Grow. Gloria, good evening.
Good evening.
So tell us about this this organization. First of all, maybe where in the area you're located and what it is you guys do.
Well, we're located on the south shore of Montreal, and we protect and rescue animals that have been abused and or used in biomedical research, particularly the chimpanzees. And the chimpanzees, of course, are nothing like a monkey. And my question for you tonight is, what do you think the difference between a chimp and a monkey is?
I don't know. That'll be my question for you. What is the difference between a chimp and a monkey?
Well, to call a chimp a monkey is similar to calling a dog a cat. And if you want to go through life calling dogs cats and cats dogs, and just as for your information and everyone else, of course, all monkeys have tails. And chimpanzees are great apes, just like us, and they do not have tails. They're like the gorilla, the orangutan, the bonobo, and that's about it. They don't have tails like us. We used to have a tail, of course, but we no longer have one anymore. So monkeys have tails, and they're not at all like chimps. And monkeys are, the largest monkey is basically a baboon, I guess, and weighs about maybe a quarter of the weight of a chimpanzee. Chimps, one of our largest chimps, he's someone that was from the Quebec City Zoo, actually. His name is Spock, and a lot of people may remember him from the zoo. He weighs about 240 pounds. So that's a lot of chimpanzee.
Sure. Tell me about how long you and the Fauna Foundation have been doing this work, and where you get the chimps from.
Well, it's actually 13 years this year, so they're celebrating an anniversary. The majority of the original chimps that moved into Fauna, and the chimps that we know of and everyone knows about, were from the research facility in New York State, part of New York University's medical facility, and it was a place called LEMSIP, the Laboratory for Experimental Surgery and Medicine in Primates. And that facility was actually closing down because of substandard housing, and the chimps were being sent off to another lab, one of the most notoriously horrible laboratories in the United States. And the veterinarian that was working with the chimps decided to start smuggling chimps out of the lab before they went on to that other place, and we took 15 chimps at that time. And they were, the thing about the chimps that came to live at Fauna that was obviously so outrageous for everyone at the time was that 8 of them were HIV positive. They're no longer positive. They eliminate the virus, and over the years we've learned that chimps are not useful in HIV research. In fact, they're not being used anymore, so essentially all the work and all the stuff that was done on them was for nothing.
Wow.
Right now we have probably 1,100 chimps in research in America right now. 30% of them are being used, and 70% at most time are not being used at all, and that's horrifying if you think about it, because that means there's nothing to use them for. They're proving to be so not a good candidate for human research. In fact, a lot of mistakes have been made. A lot of drugs have been tried for the HIV work in particular, and humans are dying because of that. So, it's not turning out so great. And right now the Institute of Medicine in the United States is actually trying to prove how useful chimps may be, because their use is on the decline, but still they sit there, in laboratories. And it's ridiculous. It's close to the end. We need to end it. It's the kind of thing we work on here at Fauna. Our chimps have become representatives and ambassadors for all the chimps that are still in biomedical research. And it's quite a job for them, to explain or to express or to talk about the things that have happened to them over the years, the damage done to their bodies, and then to actually end the research. There's the Great Ape Protection Act that's being introduced in the United States. There's 161 co-sponsors in the U.S. House of Representatives that are interested in ending chimpanzee research. We're so close, so close, and we have to keep working. And that's basically what my chimps do. They, different representatives here, our chimps' faces, our stories are used for different things, and that's how we make a change, and it's not a large number of chimps that are making the change. It's just one or two chimps and one or two chimp stories. Like everything we do in life, it takes one person to make a difference.
Gloria Grow is on the line. She's with the Fauna Foundation. She aids in the rehab of chimpanzees on the South Shore here in Montreal. What about here specifically in Quebec? Do we still have research on or experiments on chimps?
We don't have any chimps in Canada, actually.
Okay.
And the United States is actually the only place in the world that still uses chimpanzees for biomedical research. Everywhere else in the world has ended the use of chimps in biomedical research. So you can see it's clearly for an economic reason. We've seen so many different problems and situations where there's so much money being invested into, and chimpanzees are extremely expensive to house and care for. They're the largest of the great ape. Most of the other great apes, they stopped using a long time ago. And for some reason, chimps still linger on. So it's got to end, everyone's proving that it needs to end and should end, and that's what we do. We're relentless about that.
So tell me about the process. I mean, when you take a chimpanzee in who has just been at one of these research facilities, what kind of condition are they in, and what do you do to sort of help them get accustomed to their new home?
Well, that takes years. They're very. In fact, some of the papers that have been written using the chimps that are living here as examples, again, individuals with stories and histories, trauma papers. They suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Which varies exactly the same side effects that humans would suffer from. From self-mutilation to, violent outbursts, doing terrible things to themselves and having a difficult time socializing and becoming a part of a family group. The most important thing for a chimp and for many people, young children, what happens to a child who's abused by a parent? We often think, the child is, traumatized, the parent, and then we often see the child still loving the parent. The child doesn't tell on the parent. The child doesn't do anything. The child holds this in and for years and years, suffers inside, and then at a certain point, maybe when they're 30 years old, suddenly they're in, some terrible thing happens and they have a meltdown and they go into therapy and they find out that this child has been abused its whole life. And this person in society is pretty destroyed and not usually someone that can do very well. It takes a lot of work, and that's exactly what it's like with the chimps. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time. When they come out of the lab, they're pretty traumatized. In fact, a lot of them they're terrified to move into their new environments, and that's horrifying when you think, how could they be scared to move into something that's better? But when you think about what is, when you know something, even if it's horrible, it's better than what you don't know. You're so afraid of the unknown. So that's always been really a challenge for us. And we sort of specialize in helping traumatized chimpanzees, and that really varies in a lot of different ways on how you do that. And one of the things that we try to do is give them back a sense of self and being, respected and being appreciated for who they are, even with all their little quirks and their, a chimp who decides that it wants to lock his or herself into a room for a day, let them do that. It's not, a lot of us can't live in, with, I don't know, if you picked 14 people in your radio station or something, for example, and I said to you, well, you have to spend the next year with all these people in the same room, and you go deal with it, okay? Just you figure it out. I'm guaranteed you'd be locking yourself in one of your, soundproof rooms and trying to be away from everyone, and that's okay because that's normal, and that's a normal thing to do, and we try to encourage that kind of behavior. And also choices. Choices are extremely important to an individual who's had none for so long or been forced to do certain things. There's so many different things that we do to try and make life better for them, to try and empower them again. This works for humans as well as it does for chimpanzees, as well as it does for dogs, as well as it would for a cat. So it's across the board. It's not any magical theory or a magical way of doing things. It's something that's tried and true and proven in mental institutions, prisons, schools, rehabilitation centers. This is how you do it. So we're doing basically that, and it's really proven to be quite effective and very helpful. Of course, we know for a fact that over, more than 50% of chimps in biomedical research, or any animal in biomedical research for that matter, are totally traumatized and suffering from PTSD and psychological problems. And one of the things they often say is, well, now in research, oh, well, we give them indoor-outdoor facilities. Oh, well, they get to live in social groups. Oh, my God, we give them color television. Oh, my God, they watch movies and they get popcorn. What more do you want us to do for them? Well, being locked in a cage and having biomedical experimental procedures done on you on a daily basis or waiting for a year to have one done is extremely traumatizing and extremely cruel. And we've pretty much proven that vivisection is a terrible, outdated approach that must be replaced with humane and better science. So why aren't we doing it? Let's just do it. Let's just end it and not have to have anyone else go through this horrible stuff when we don't even need to do that.
I completely agree, Gloria. I think it's disgusting that even still goes on in the Western world. We have to go, but tell me quickly how people can help. I know you have an Adopt a Chimp program, and you're also looking for donations of items.
Yes, we're always looking for items because we try to, improve the lives of the chimps, and unfortunately that has to be with, things like humans. We do have an Adopt a Chimp program, which is wonderful because that does help certain individuals and you get to learn about the chimps. But we also are always trying to raise money, especially right now we're trying to get more windows without bars in the chimp house because, we built the chimp house 13 years ago. We had to do it very quickly, and we had some bars on the windows, and we'd really like to remove them so the chimps can just look out over the pastures and enjoy the sun and the view and just live their days, with a window without bars.
Quickly, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, you just have to look up Fauna. Fauna chimpanzees, that's how it comes up. So we have, it's faunafoundation.org, but there's all kinds. As soon as you look up Fauna, you'll find us.
Gloria Grow with the Fauna Foundation. Thanks so much, and very interesting work. I'm glad we had the chance to learn about this facility.
Well, thank you so much for caring. I really appreciate that you care and that you're interested in knowing. Thank you. You're making a big difference for a lot of chimpanzees.
Thanks very much. I hope so. It's 8:40.